Lab alongside of Steve Tasker, and now it is time in our show where we welcome our friend Greg Cosell on with us. He's an NFL Films senior producer and is also the co-host of ESPN's NFL Matchup. Greg Cosell's segment is brought to you by Scott Lawn Yard. It's the official commercial site work partner of the Buffalo Bills. And Greg, thanks for spending part of your Friday with us as we help preview this Bills-Jaguars matchup. So we'll start here first. What do you think of these two teams going up against each other in Week 5?
So, Maddie, have you come off the high yet from the game last Sunday?
I don't think so. I think we're still riding that high. What do you think, Tasker?
Greg, these guys are a wagon, man. They are a wrecking crew. Are they not?
We know how the NFL works. The week before, the Dolphins were the best team in the history of Western civilization, and this week the Bills are the best team in the history of Western civilization. We know how that works.
That's right. You're right in our wheelhouse.
Yeah, there you go.
But there's no question. I mean, the Bills have scored, 38, 37, now 48.
No question.
Give us an idea of what's going on with them. They are playing at such a high level. What do you notice?
I mean, I think, to me, when you look at their offense, I think there's an efficiency now to the offense. They didn't run the ball as well as they would have hoped this past week against Miami, but I think there's a sense that there's a little more balance in their approach. I think there's a sense, too, with the pass game that there's more rhythm and timing throws, which really help to sustain your offense. The big plays come. The play we're looking at now is obviously a schemed play that worked really effectively because it generated the reaction that I wanted to from the secondary. Josh will always make these kinds of plays that we're looking at. But overall, I think you're looking at an offense that just, to me, has the feel of being just a little more rhythmic, a little more timing based. I think they start games off with Josh getting into that kind of rhythm, where there's shorter throws. We haven't seen Kincaid in terms of, yards per catch, but he's catching a lot of 6, 7, 8-yard balls. Those plays matter. They might not seem like they're big plays in the overall context of a game, but those plays matter. And, I just think that there's a greater sense of sustaining offense and not relying on big plays or Josh Allen having to be Superman.
I think we've seen it too in his career when he kind of takes what the defense is giving him and gets that warm up in the beginning of the game. We've always seen it pay off better throughout the rest of the game with how he's able to kind of open things up and how his vision works for the field. But this year we've seen an increased use of Josh Allen under center and play action this season. What do you make of that? And then how have you seen it help the Bills on offense? Because it's been successful when they've been in it.
Well, I'm personally a believer, Maddie, that under center play action is far more effective than shotgun play action. Because what ultimately are you looking to do? You're looking to get a reaction from second-level defenders. So when you're under center, it takes longer for the mesh point to be reached, and therefore second-level defenders have to wait a beat longer to see, is this a run or is it a pass? When you're in the gun, the play action happens instantaneously, so you don't generate the reaction as much that you're looking for from second-level defenders. So I'm personally a bigger believer in under center play action. And I also think it fits more with the fact that they want to develop both a more frequent and a more consistent run game. So I think all those things go together. It's funny, while you were talking, we saw the highlight of one of Diggs' touchdowns, the one that he caught in the corner. And I absolutely love that play for this reason, because what is one of the staple concepts the Bills like to run? You guys know this. They like to run what I call bang play action with kind of a condensed, bang 8 or skinny post. And they played off that so beautifully, that self-scouting. They played off that so beautifully with that Diggs touchdown, because it was basically the exact same look. And he started to break inside, and we're seeing it again. He started to break inside, and then he just broke outside. And Kohu, who'd probably seen this play 1,000 times as he was preparing for this game, figured, hey, I got this taken care of. I'm going to jump inside and take away the inside break. And then, of course, Diggs broke outside. And to me, that's just really good coaching and really good game planning.
Yeah, and as you see, too, that much more under center for Josh Allen. It does lead to all the efficiency and the hard play action. But I think everything starts up front. This offensive line, to me, seems much, much improved from last year, certainly. And so I was going to ask you to give us a quick thumbnail of their offensive line, and specifically the young guy, Osiris Torrance. How's he hanging in there? It looks like he's playing really well.
He's playing well, Steve. I mean, and it's funny because you know this from your playing days. Offensive linemen get a little more excited when they can move forward instead of having to move backward. And, when you can run the ball, and particularly when you run the ball from under center and they can fire off the ball, they get excited. They want to play that way. And I think it makes them better overall. But just in general, I think Torrance has played well. I think the O-line overall has played well. Aaron Cromer's doing a really good job with this group. And, it just, I guess, and again, it's a long season. Look, we know that. We know anything can happen. So we're not sitting here saying that every game's going to be 48-20 or 37-10 or whatever the scores have been. That's just unrealistic in today's NFL. So we don't want to necessarily say that. But I think that to me, there seems to be a greater comfort level with the way in which they're playing offense. We all know that Josh Allen can be a great, great player and make special plays. And we'll see more of those. Clearly, I mean, he made one of those against the Commanders a couple of weeks ago where he rolled, I think it was against the Commanders, where he ended up leaving the pocket to his right and hitting Diggs for 30 yards or so on a throw that not many can make other than Josh. But, and those plays will happen. And by the way, he'll throw a few more picks too here and there. That's going to happen. Sure. But it just seems to me like there's a more comfortable feel to the offense. It just looks more rhythmic, and I think that's a really good thing going forward.
Flipping to the defense for the Bills, you talk about anything can happen in this season, and we saw that last week with Tre'Davious White getting injured in that game against the Dolphins. We all feel so bad because this guy worked so hard to rehab back from that ACL injury. He finally had a healthy offseason, a full offseason to get back at it, and then in week 4 suffers another injury, an Achilles injury. He tore his Achilles, and he will be out for the rest of the season. So in walks a guy like Kaiir Elam and Dane Jackson and Christian Benford, the 3 guys who made up the cornerbacks position group for most of last year when Tre'Davious White was still rehabbing back from that injury. We haven't saw Kaiir Elam be active yet. We would expect that that's going to happen for this game against the Jaguars. What does he bring to the table? Because at the end of the year last year, we saw his physicality on display late last year against the Dolphins when he had a couple of big pass breakups against Tyreek Hill at the end of the season. What do you think he can bring to the table?
Maddie, I need your help here, okay? I'm begging for your help. I don't know why Kaiir Elam, what's going on with him? Because this guy is physically gifted, and you need to help me out because I loved his tape coming out of college. I thought he'd come into the league, and I'm not saying he'd be a star from day one, but he's big, he's physical, he can run. There's got to be something going on here that I know nothing about because, as you said, he hasn't been active. So what's going on? Because I think this guy's really gifted.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on either. When Sean McDermott has been asked about it, he said, Kaiir just needs to keep at it. He just needs to keep practicing. He's doing a good job. So we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks. I mean, with him
he's going to have to play. He's going to have to get some snaps, I would think. I mean, you can't just play with 2. I mean, obviously, Teron Johnson's their slot. We know that. But you can't just play with 2 outside corners pretty much every week the way this league is going now. So I'm just so anxious to see Elam because this kid has every trait you want in an outside corner. And, I thought by now he'd be entrenched. Obviously, I didn't know Tre'Davious White would get hurt. None of us did. Yeah. But I thought he'd be entrenched as the starter opposite Tre'Davious White. And clearly it has not worked out that way.
Yeah, and who knows if he'll play ahead of Dane Jackson or on the field with Dane Jackson or Christian Benford who is struggling with a little bit of a shoulder that he got hurt last week. No question, though, having a guy like Kaiir Elam puts the Bills in a pretty good spot with his athleticism and ability to hang in there in man coverage. Give us an idea of what you see overall in the Bills this year. I mean, you've watched this team. We've had you on. Sean McDermott calling the defensive plays.
Yeah, I got a couple of
What do you
things here,
notice?
Steve.
Yeah, what do you notice?
I think the revelation's been Bernard. I think he's played really, really well. And obviously when he was drafted, I liked his tape coming out of college. The concern was he's smaller. But I think he's played really well. We know how good Milano is. It's interesting. Given what happened last week, I knew I'd be asked about the Bills' defense by everybody, and I put on the tape and I thought to myself, God, I don't really know what to say because they didn't really step out of what they normally do. There were probably a few tweaks here and there that I can't possibly know about because I'm not in the meetings. But the way the way the Bills normally play defense with split safety, with four-man pressure, with their linebackers being really smart and savvy, that's kind of the way they play, So they could stay with their normal identity and just make a couple of adjustments based on playing the Dolphins, but they didn't have to step out of who they are. And when I finished watching the tape, I just kept saying to myself, I don't have any brilliant answer for when people ask me that question. They just played really, really well. And, what really struck me was how Hyde was communicating on every single play. And I think when you have a veteran like that, and to be honest, I was a little concerned, as I'm sure you two were, when it was announced that last Friday that Poyer was out, because Poyer and Hyde, having played together for so long and being so smart and aware and, understanding route concepts based on personnel, receiver distribution, receiver splits. Obviously Taylor Rapp hasn't been here. This is his first year. So I was a little concerned, but they didn't really miss a beat at all. But they did not have to step out of how they normally like to play.
And I think that's about the best compliment you can give to a defense that's going up against this Miami offense that people are calling revolutionary and different in terms of the speed that they use and how they can get guys open. Sean McDermott even talked about it. Like, this is a team that, we may have to play a little bit different against. And to be able to keep your identity and to play like smash mouth
That was coach
football.
Speak, Maddie. That was
coach speak. Okay.
Yeah.
But to be able to stay in what you do best and do it against the best offenses in the NFL, I think says a lot about the defense that you can play. I have a question for you about Terrell Bernard. Through 4 weeks of play, do you see this consistency? Do you want to see it a little more through a few more games before you believe that he's going to be a difference maker on this defense?
Well, that's a hard question for me to answer, and I'm being honest because I'm not charting every play.
Right.
But I think he shows up on tape. That's what I can say with absolute certainty. He shows up on tape. Now, again, because I'm not charting every play and I'm not a linebacker coach, it's the coach's job literally every play to say, hey, you're playing well, but here's a couple of things we need to be working on to get better and better. That's what coaches do, and that's what they should do. But I think he shows up. I think he flashes. I think, he seems to have a good feel for what he's seeing. So I think that overall, Matty, he's playing really well. But let me just say this, if I could segue, because you can't take this Jaguars team lightly at all. And despite what the numbers might show, if you watch Trevor Lawrence through 4 games, he's actually playing at a really high level. I know that people might not think that, but he is playing really, really well. And this is not an offense you can take lightly, nor a team you can take lightly.
Yeah, the Bills have been victims of that before after going down to a 1-12 or 1-13 club 2 years ago and getting beat 9-6 by the.
I remember that game. Yeah, that was the Josh Allen game, and it was not the right Josh Allen that stood out.
That's right. Well, it was not as far as Bills fans are concerned, but certainly as far as Jacksonville fans are concerned.
Right. Well, that's what I meant. Yes.
Yeah, and so let's talk about a little bit going forward. My hesitation with this whole scenario, how it's played out, is that the Bills are playing at such a high level. You think, wow, that Week 2 game against Las Vegas, okay, then then you got the Washington Commanders, 2 teams that are kind of struggling. Well, then you get the Miami Dolphins in here, and you beat them worse than anybody.
Yeah.
They still got 13 weeks to get to the end of the season to get to the playoffs.
That's,
It's hard to maintain this level of
I know
efficiency.
that was my point. Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be like this every single week. And I know it's easy because they just beat the Dolphins, who I know I was being sarcastic about the best team, in the history of Western civilization. But, there was a sense that this Dolphins team was really, really good. And that, man, now the Bills are so good that they just have to show up. And Steve, it doesn't work like that. And you don't win every week in this league scoring 48 points. I mean, look, the Bills have averaged probably about 30 for the last 3 years. We know they have a really good offense, but it doesn't just automatically happen.
Yeah, the Bills will have to be good against the Jaguars on offense up front. We know it starts with the defensive line, and Greg Rousseau has been ruled out for this game with a foot injury, a sore foot.
Oh, that's a big
is what
deal.
Sean McDermott is saying. Von Miller was a limited participant in practices this week. His 21-day window to return to the active roster began on Wednesday. Sean McDermott said, we're taking it one day at a time with Von Miller. He's ruled as questionable for Sunday morning's game against the Jaguars. Now, if you ask Von Miller, he spoke to the media today, and he said there's a 94.5% chance that I'll play. He said there's a safe bet that I'm going to be out there on the field. But my question for you is about this defensive line. What are they doing at such a high level that's allowing them to lead the league in sacks right now with 16? They're pressuring at one of the highest rates in the NFL, but they're also blitzing at one of the lowest rates in the NFL.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Maddie, before you said that it's really been the D line. And even when they do blitz, because blitzes are usually charted on any website you look as a 5-man pressure. So when they do bring a second level player, it's what we call a simulated pressure or a zone exchange. It's still a 4-man rush. You'll see Milano rush, but then they'll drop out a defensive end on the other side. So it's really a 4-man pressure. But to get to your point, they're winning a lot of one-on-ones. I mean, I don't recall in his 10-year career, not that I've seen every game or can remember every snap, clearly not, but I just don't recall Daquan Jones playing the way he did last Sunday. I mean, he was absolutely a dominant force inside, and he was winning one-on-ones. That's the thing. It wasn't as if it was any cool stuff. He was just winning one-on-ones pretty consistently. And that's the way I think this D-line has been playing through the last number of weeks. There's been a lot of one-on-ones that they're winning. They're just playing individually at a high level.
And we saw it too, and we, as you said, Greg Rousseau's absence is going to make a difference this week, and we're going to have to see how that goes. Von Miller will probably be on a pitch count, as we've been talking about. Give us an idea of what Epineza and Leonard Floyd, what they've brought to the table. And Epineza seems to be on a little bit of an uptick from where we've seen him the last 2 years.
I would agree with that, and I think that Leonard Floyd has really played well. I have a good friend who's with the Rams the last number of years, and he's studied, he's not with them anymore, but he studies tape, and he said Leonard Floyd is playing at a much higher level than he played when he was with us, meaning the Rams. So Floyd is playing pretty well, as and he's one of those guys with his length, his bend. If he can play at a high level, he gives you an awful lot, Steve, because of the kind of athlete that he is. So, they're getting really strong individual play. And that's what I think ultimately Sean McDermott, if you had him with truth serum, he would tell you that's ultimately what he wants. He wants to be able to rush with 4. He wants to be able to play with 7 on the back end. He likes to play with split safety. Or let's put it this way. He likes to have the ability for his safeties to kind of muddy the looks for the quarterback. They do that really well, particularly when Poyer and Hyde are together. They kind of blur the lines for the quarterback between whether it's split safety or single high, and that's the first thing quarterbacks look at, when they come to the line of scrimmage. And I think you want to have the ability to do that without having to commit one of those guys clearly, in the box. So that's why the 4-man pass rush is so critical.
That's a great point there, Greg. I want to flip to the Jaguars defense because the Bills will go up against another tough defense. They faced the Commanders, they've faced the Dolphins. Now they're going to face Jacksonville, and they've got the other Josh Allen up front who has 6 sacks right now, which ties for the lead league. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are ranked high in some statistical categories on defense. They're allowing just 20.5 points per game. They've got 9 takeaways, which ranks up near some of the best. I know the Bills have 11, but 9 is a high number as well. What do they have to game plan for to be able to
Yeah.
deal with this Josh Allen-led defense and the rest of the guys that make up the Jags D?
Well, taking nothing away from their defense, they've got some good players, obviously Josh Allen being one of them. They haven't played the best offensive teams in the league other than the Chiefs. So, I think their defense is solid. I think, they have some players you do have to be concerned about. Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker has not really emerged yet as a big-time pass rusher on the other side. So Aluakon is a really, really good linebacker. He's not necessarily a blitzer, but he's a really, really good linebacker. Last week, Devin Lloyd was inactive and they played Chad Muma. I don't know what the status is this week. I think you can attack them at the corner position. I mean, I think Tyson Campbell's a solid player, but when you get them in their nickel, they have Herndon who plays in the slot. I think they're vulnerable to some degree in the pass game. And as I said, they haven't played the best offenses, so their numbers are probably going to be pretty good. But I'm very curious if they can protect that. And the pass game always starts with protection. We know that. If you can't protect, you can't throw it. So if they can protect, I think there's going to be opportunities in the pass game here. So I'm very anxious to see that.
And you're right. They haven't played the best offenses, but they did play the Chiefs. They lost
They did play the Chiefs.
And they only gave up 17 points. Now, I know Mahomes and those guys, they're not playing great, along this time. But it's still Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs, and they're defending world champions. What are the Jacksonville Jaguars able to do to these teams? They've got one team, Indianapolis Colts, on opening day that scored 21 points. And, of course, the Texans scored 37 on them. What are these teams doing? What are the Jaguars doing to these offenses to keep them off the board, except for the Texans?
Oh, no. I mean, they have some good personnel. I mean, they can rush the quarterback. There's no question they can do that. I actually like their safeties a lot. I like Cisco. I like Jenkins. Those are two players I really, really like, and they're somewhat interchangeable. As I said, I think you can attack them on the outside, particularly Williams is a smaller corner and Herndon plays in the slot. I think you can attack those guys, but you have to protect. And actually, they've got some interior defensive linemen who are not well-known names, who are really solid players. Robertson Harris is a really good player. So this is not an easy defense to play against, but I think there are some areas that you can attack. Now, then it comes down to, of course, down in distance. I mean, you have to be able to stay on schedule, be in a situation where you can do what you want to do. You start getting caught up in all these 3rd and 9s and the whole game changes. So I'm not suggesting they're easy to play against, but I think there are areas where they're going to feel that they can attack.
I also want to dive a little bit deeper into what you said about Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars playing a little bit better on offense than maybe the numbers may tell you. And I think this year a lot of us were expecting Trevor Lawrence to have, this is going to be the breakout season. This is when they'll figure it all out on offense. This is when we're going to see what he did in college in the NFL. Do you think that's going to happen this season? What has he been doing well on offense so far to start the season? What does he need to do that maybe we haven't seen yet?
Well, Daddy, people respond to numbers, okay? He's actually playing well. There have been some really bad drops. And as good as Calvin Ridley is, he's had some really bad drops. And so Lawrence is playing at a pretty high level, and that's important for people to understand that, just because the numbers have not been there, and that's what people look at, as we know. The one thing they've not been able to do as well as I'm sure they hoped and they need to is run the ball. That's an area of their offense that hasn't worked. Now, I think Cam Robinson is due back. I'm very curious to see what they do with him because Walker Little has played left tackle the first 4 weeks, and he's played really well. The right tackle is a rookie, Anton Harrison, out of Oklahoma, and he's been very, very up and down. So I don't know what their plan is, whether maybe they move Walker Little to right tackle. I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out on Sunday morning. But they just have not been able to run the ball well at all. And that's, again, something they want to do and need to do. So we'll see how that plays out. But they also have Evan Ingram, and Evan Ingram's a really intriguing player on offense because he can line up anywhere, and he does. And therefore, they've got a lot of versatility and multiplicity with their formations and what they can do out of different formations, because he's essentially a hybrid tight end wide receiver. So, they have a lot of really good options on offense, and Lawrence is playing well. But it's the run game that's been a factor, and at times pass protection. But Lawrence is not the issue with this offense.
Greg, so good to talk to you. Appreciate your insights. Can't wait to talk to you next week in week number 6.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Thanks so much.